Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order this morning. Well, this is a beautiful day, and it is great to see all of you with your beautiful smiles here this morning as we recognize Judge Issac Anderson, Jr. I'd like to begin this morning by recognizing a few of the special guests who have joined us, and I'd like to start with Judge Anderson's family members. His wife, Audria, has joined us, his son, Justin, and Isaac as well. Isaac, thank you for joining us. Thank you, guys. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd also like to recognize this morning members of the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. There you go. You can recognize them in their red coats. We have representation from Senator Marco Rubio's office. London Rotundo is here. London? In the back. There you go. Thank you, London, for coming. And then I am so excited to see so many elected officials have joined us this morning. Would you, if you're an elected official, would you just raise your hand? I saw the mayor here, several of them. Judges, elected officials, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to our community. Well, this morning we're going to hear from some folks who personally knew Judge Anderson and served right alongside him. But to begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the man who we're here to recognize, Judge Issac Anderson, Jr. So Judge Issac Anderson, Jr. was a circuit judge in the 20th Judicial Circuit. He passed away in 2007 after more than 26 years on the bench. Isaac was born right here in Fort Myers, Florida, into a family of modest means. Isaac believed that with a good education, hard work, faith in God, he could accomplish anything. He graduated from Dunbar High School, where he sang in the choir and played football. Isaac attended Allen University in Columbia, South Carolina, but after a year, he volunteered to join the United States Air Force, and he served a tour of duty in Vietnam. He was honorably discharged in 1968, and he continued his education at Edison Community College. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in American Studies at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and a law degree at the Washington College of Law at American University in Washington, D.C. Returning to Fort Myers, he opened a law office on Main Street and conducted a general practice including civil and criminal defense work. Strongly committed to community service, Isaac worked for the improvement of his community through the Dunbar Coalition, the Dunbar Improvement Association, and as president of the Kiwanis Club East. He was a life member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity and a member of the Southwest Florida chapter of the National Bar Association and also a member of the American Bar Association. Appointed county judge in 1981 by then Governor Graham, Isaac stood for election in 1982, and elected officials, listen to this, he won with 79% of the vote. How many of us would want that, right? We know he was proud of that. Well, the overwhelming support for his work on the bench fueled his passion for safeguarding the individual's rights in the litigation process. In 1990, he was elected to the circuit court where he spent the remainder of his career. He developed a reputation for being tough but fair. He maintained a strong presence in his courtroom, requiring strict decorum in dress and behavior. He abided by a simple principle: treat others the way you would wish to be treated. This morning, we do have an opportunity to hear from some of the folks who worked very closely with Judge Anderson and who knew him personally. And I'd like to begin by introducing our Chief Judge, Michael McHugh. Judge?
Thank you, Commissioner Hammond, and welcome to everyone here. If you had told me 30 years ago when I was a young prosecutor that I would be here speaking at the dedication of this courthouse to Ike Anderson, I wouldn't have believed you, because probably at that point as a young prosecutor, if you asked me how I would describe Judge Anderson, it would be iconic, imposing, and terrifying. As a very young prosecutor, walking into Judge Anderson's courtroom was intimidating. And I think the fact that Judge Nelson was the other half of that felony tandem probably added to that. But over the years, I got to know Judge Anderson both professionally and then later personally. I tried a number of cases in front of him, and now looking back over that period of time, I think about, Judge Anderson was the first black judge in Lee County. And it's amazing. I mean, it's an incredible accomplishment. we have, and Commissioner Hammond asked, all the elected officials to raise their hand. As elected officials, you are always concerned, and you always know that skepticism is going to come, criticism is going to come, and quite frankly, people are going to want you to fail. And as a judge, you know that you can't respond to a lot of that criticism. When you take the bench, you give up a lot of your First Amendment rights. You can't talk about cases in front of you, decisions that you made, issues that might be in front of you. And so when that criticism comes, you basically have to hold your tongue. Knowing Judge Anderson the way I later got to know him, I know that was difficult. I know that was difficult for all of us. But he did an incredible job with that. And I think about the position that he was in when he was there. And while all of us might have people who want us to fail as public officials, no one had as many as Judge Anderson. In the position that he was in as the first black judge in Lee County, there were a lot of people who didn't want him to succeed. And he overcame that and became not just the first black judge in Lee County, and not just a great black judge, but a great judge and a great person. And that is an incredible accomplishment. And so I want to tell a story. When I left the state attorney's office, I went into civil practice, and I worked for an insurance carrier who took a hard line on certain types of cases. And because of that, I tried a lot of cases. 3 weeks in a row, I was in front of Judge Anderson in jury civil trials. And after the third one, when the jury was out, Judge Anderson said, "Mr. McHugh, can you come to the bench?" And once again, that feeling of being terrified, came like, "Oh Lord, why does he want to talk to me and just me?" And he picked up I came up to the bench, he picked up his spray bottle, and he looked at me and he said, "Mr. McHugh, if you bring another one of these pieces of garbage cases in front of me, you're gonna get it." And so I had a moment of fear, and then he just broke out laughing, just cracking up. And it was so Judge Anderson. And so I was appointed to the bench, and I sat up in Charlotte County on the felony docket, which is where Judge Anderson ended his time on the bench. And it was so comforting to me on a felony docket to have someone like Judge Anderson there, so that any question you had, any issue you had someone who had done it, had been through it, and you could talk to it. And so I was there as his health began to fail, and he was taken from us way too early. And so now when I think about Judge Anderson, I think I would describe him as inspiring. I would describe him as having an incredible sense of humor that you maybe wouldn't have known when you first got to know him, and still a little terrifying. But that's good, and it was perfect for the job he is, and it's perfect for his personality. And it's so wonderful that we are here to dedicate this building for him. And I just thank Commissioner Hammond for allowing me to talk. And I'm so proud and so happy for the family, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful event. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Judge McHugh. Our next speaker will be somebody who also practiced in front of Judge Anderson as a prosecutor, our State Attorney, Amira Fox.
Good morning, everybody. I'm State Attorney Amira Fox, and what a tremendous privilege it is to stand here to honor and pay tribute to such a wonderful man and a great jurist. Thank you, Commissioner Hammond, and the rest of the Lee County Board of Commissioners for putting on and doing this wonderful event for Judge Issac Anderson. And for all the stakeholders and my partners in the system, thank you to you, because you are the ones who keep us going all day long. And the Anderson family, Mrs. Anderson, Justin, Isaac, for your tremendous community service. You have truly honored your husband, your father, in your role in playing such a great part of our community, so thank you. So yes, I did have the privilege of practicing in front of Judge Issac Anderson when I started in 1990 and went to a felony docket in 1991, where I was introduced to the great Issac Anderson. And I'll tell you what, it was practicing, because Judge Anderson made us practice until in his eyes we were perfect. He was tough on us, Yes, he was terrifying, as Judge McHugh said, but that helped him be tough on us. He was exacting, he was precise, and he made us do our job right. If we were being inefficient or disorganized, he let us know about it. And thus he made us really, really good attorneys. We were able to have one of the finest role models and teachers as a judge we could have ever hoped to have. And he taught us every day in that courtroom how to be organized, how to run a docket efficiently, how to try a good case, and most importantly, professionalism. He held us to the highest standard of professionalism, and we followed him. And thus, I look back, I look at myself and Kathy Smith, our public defender, who I know is about to say a few words, and I look back and I know who shaped us. I know who shaped us into great lawyers, and more importantly, I know who shaped us into public servants and community leaders, because what he taught us most of all is you have to love and work really hard in the community where you live and work. So I want to say from the bottom of my heart, a huge thank you to Judge Issac Anderson and for what he taught me and what he made me personally. And I know many of you out there, I see you smiling and nodding, and I know many of you are feeling this also because you had the privilege of practicing law in front of Judge Anderson. So Judge Anderson, I hope that you're looking down and that you're very proud of all of us today who you had such a role in shaping, because I know we're so proud to have been shaped by you. And we will treasure our memories every day when we come to this courthouse and we see that it has been renamed in your honor, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, State Attorney Amira Fox. I'd now like to introduce our public defender, Kathy Smith.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to the family for being here, and thank you for making this day happen, Commission. When I think of Judge Anderson, I think of a couple things in particular. He had a great sense of humor. I agree he was terrifying on the first day that I met him. Actually, the first day that I met him was the first day that I was a lawyer at the public defender's office. And I was taken to court to be trained by another lawyer who just told me, go up and ask Judge Anderson for a continuance. So I go up and I say, okay, Judge, can I have a continuance? And the first question's, why? And I'm going basically like looking back at the other lawyer like, why? And she says, you don't have discovery. So literally, this is my first day practicing law, and I'm not sure I knew what discovery was on that day. So through the entire morning, he's asking me questions about cases which I do not have the answers to. It was a long morning for me, maybe even longer for him, but at the end of the day, I got a Judge McHugh moment where he says, please come up here to the bench. So I go up to the bench, and he says, are you going to be my new public defender? And I said, yes, Kathy Ferran. This is before I was married. Kathy Ferran, nice to meet you. And he said, Lordy, this is going to take a lot of work. But I must have made somebody mad in your office. And he laughed, and he walked away. That was my first day in court. Another thing that I remember about him distinctly is that he was notoriously early for court. So if you thought you were being early by getting there 20 minutes early, he was already on the bench. So it was a little bit terrifying because you're looking at your watch saying, oh my God, am I late? And I think at one point he actually moved to take the clock out of his courtroom. So we just did not know when we were supposed to be there. Looking at, he was a very compassionate man, and probably better than his sense of humor, I remember him for his humanity. And what I mean by that is when people appeared in front of him, he was really a great judge of character. And he did not only want to know about what the person in court was before him for being charged with, but he also implored us to tell their stories, to tell what their family and friends thought of them, what their employers thought of them. He didn't look at one incident and judge a person on that one incident. He really wanted to know who the person was before he sentenced them. So it's very, very fitting today that this courthouse is being renamed in his honor, because justice is what he served and justice is what he doled out because of the person that he was. So thank you for allowing me to be here today, and what a fantastic day.
Very good. It is now my privilege to introduce somebody who there is no question about his commitment to law and order, our Sheriff, Carmine Marcino.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. Wow, I got to tell you, while I've never met Judge Anderson, I got to tell you, I'm glad I haven't. He looked pretty fearful from what I hear. I got to say, first I want to thank the county commissioners, great commissioners that we have here for dedicating this tower to our great judge. In life, so many times we have events that take place, things that happen in our lives, and our lives are busy. A lot of times, like the passing of Judge Anderson in 2007, people don't forget when you work with them, and people tend to get back to their normal routine of life. Work, family, children. There's so many things that life throws at us. But today, I'm proud to say that when I walk to the courthouse, when we come to work, when we look at this tower, it's that constant reminder when life gets real busy and we move forward that we never forget. So today is a very proud day. My heart is with the family, the fraternity brothers that are over there. I got the chance to speak with all, just amazing people here. And this is why Lee County leads the way. We take the time to think about those in the community that have done so much. So it's an honor to stand here to dedicate this tower and never forget what the judge stood for. Thank you, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
Sheriff, thank you, and thank you to all of your law enforcement family for their service. Thank you guys for keeping us safe every night. I'd like to introduce now somebody who actually did have to make a few appearances as a law enforcement officer in front of Judge Anderson, our chairman of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners, Commissioner Cecil Pendergrass.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the Anderson family for your commitment for decades of service here in Lee County and everything you've done. Because like the judge said, this is kind of ironic. 30 years ago, over 30 years when I first met Judge Issac Anderson, I've only been fear of two men in my life. And some of you will know those people. One of them was called Morgan House, if I remember that name. And the next one was Judge Anderson. I remember one before Judge Anderson, over my 3 decades of law enforcement, the first time in traffic court. And I've never seen a man's eyes get so big when the defendant came in and rolled his eyes at the judge. Well, you know what happened to that? The guy got found guilty. And it's just he was such an honor to work with. And I remember our mornings together. There's mornings I'd go meet with him at farmer's market for breakfast. And he would tell me, Cecil, we're not going to talk about work. I don't hear about golf. I don't hear about family and what's going on in Dunbar. That's all he wanted to talk about. He didn't want to hear about anything else. He didn't want to talk about what's going on in the police department. He didn't want to hear about politics. He wanted to know what was going on in the Dunbar community while we had our breakfast and enjoyed ourselves, and he didn't want to hear about golf. He wasn't really a golfer. I think he fished a little bit here and there, but that was it. He might have played golf later in life. But I will tell you a funny story since the judge brought it up. I had one case before I had this gentleman that had arrested for possession and driving a suspended DL, and he fled the vehicle. We go before the judge, and the guy comes in, he's wearing the shorts that were a little bit too low, and he had SpongeBob boxers on that were showing, and his big shirt was a huge marijuana leaf. We both go up to the bench, must have been Michigan Court. He's looking at me and his eyes are getting big. Now everybody knows Judge Anderson. And I started to speak about the case. He said, Cecil, stop. I'm like, okay. He looks at the guy, he says, young man, this is my chambers. This is my bench. Why are you dressed like that? Well, I'm not going to repeat what the guy said. He looked at me, he says, you don't need to testify anymore. 30 days, $500 fine, and a year of probation. The guy was just looking at a traffic fine. We wanted to get him 30 days. So right there to show how Judge Anderson respected the courtroom, respected the Justice Center, respected this building, respected the system, and he respected life. That's the most important thing today. So today, justice is being done. We're naming the building after Judge Anderson. Thank you to my colleagues for supporting this. We are making an impact. I would like to ask you, Andrew, if you could please stand up. I have a pen I'd like to give you too, just for being the widow. This is the county pen of our courthouse across the street. So if you please take this and honor the judge. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your service, your husband's service. We're truly missing them. Yeah, thank you again for being here today.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce now Commissioner from the 3rd District, Commissioner Ray Sandelli.
Well, good morning. I am honored to be here. I was probably one of the few who did not know the judge, and so I felt a little awkward about even coming up and trying to make a comment. Fortunately, my good buddy here, the sheriff, cleared the way for me. So I'm honored to be here this morning. I did not have the honor to meet Judge Anderson, but I did go back and read about his distinguished career. As a veteran, I honored his service there, as I think everybody here is honored his service today. The one thing I noted was that he was only 61 when he passed. I lost my father when he was 57. I kept thinking about all the times and all the lessons he had that he could not impart to us because of his age. And when I read the judge was only 61, I thought it's kind of the same thing. So many of these good people go too early. We have a flyover too. Go too early, and you think of all the lessons that have not been passed on. But what a great honor to have his name on this building here that reminds us of his legacy, but also inspires young people to follow him, as was shared this morning. I hope this event this morning, again, serves to inspire the next generations of people that are not only good professionals, but are simply good people. Thank you very much for allowing me a few words this morning.
Well, I had a moment to talk in the hallway with Commissioner Frank Mann. He's probably our longest serving county commissioner on the board right now, and I asked, did you know Judge Anderson? And I learned something very new. Yes, absolutely, they were fishing buddies. So I'd like to welcome up the commissioner from the 5th District and Judge Issac Anderson's fishing buddy, Commissioner Mann.
Thank you, Brian. I've never spoken in front of a group of so many judicial-related folks. I don't think it's going to hurt my image all that bad, but it's a joy, Audra, to be here with you and the two handsome devils that you dragged around all these years, wonderful folks. I met Ike. He was Ike to me. And I'd like to say he was Ike to his really dear friends. But thank you for backing me up on that. In his early legal career, it turned out, and this was late 70s, 75, 76, thereabout, I had my legislative office while I was in the House of Representatives in the blue part of the courthouse here. And it turned out that Ike had his office, his law office at the time, up there next door to me. So I got to know Ike as Ike, and a good buddy, and a husband and a father. And I had boys about that same age, and we had lots to share about with those kids. But what I want to tell you about, and the statute has run, one of the fishing trips that Ike and I took was down off the end of the beach where I was teaching him how to throw a cast net. And Kevin Irwin, the biologist and scientist who's run his office right down just 2 blocks from here for many years, Kevin had taught me. He was with the DER at that time, Department of Environmental Regulation, they called it. So we were down there off of what would become and known as Lover Key, and it's a very popular spot in in Florida, all of Florida. So Kevin was kind of down the beach, and I was less down the beach, and I could walk that way. Kevin and I hear, hey, look at here. And here's Ike, and he's got, we were close enough to see, at least it was a 30-plus inch snow. Well, you weren't supposed to be catching snow, any inch. And Kevin, he starts going, the ice is going on. I forget what happened to that stuff. I'll get out of here because I wanted you to know the real Ike. He's such a beautiful guy. It's such a joy to be with under whatever circumstances. There came a vacancy on the court system here. Bob Graham was the governor at the time. I was kind of the go-to guy because at that time I was a Democrat because that's all you could be in Lee County. And the governor would ask me what I thought about appointments. And I said, Judge Issac Anderson. He's got to be. And I don't know whether he listened to me or the dozens of others that he listened to. But that was one of the best appointments he ever made. I miss him. I love him.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mann, for that great story. I'm sure the snook found its way back home safe. Well, it is now a real pleasure to welcome and recognize Judge Issac Anderson's wife, Audria. Please come and share a few words about your husband.
Thank you, Commissioner Hammond. Good morning, family, friends, neighbors. Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here today. First, I'd like to thank the Lee County Commissioners for bestowing this honor upon Judge Issac Anderson, Jr., a worthy recipient. Secondly, I'd like to say a special word about Commissioner Hammond. He is the one who nominated Isaac and shepherded this nomination to fruition. And for that, he is our 4th District Commissioner. And many of you are in that 4th District. So I say to you, meet your commissioner. And at this point, I'd like to invite all of you, including all the people who are standing behind me, to join us for a reception at the Collaboratory, which is about 3 blocks down the street on Jackson Street. Just turn right on Jackson Street and you will see the Collaboratory. Please join us there where we can continue this and our elected officials can actually fellowship with many of you. So I do invite you and hope that you can join us. Thank you again to the County Commissioners for bestowing this honor. And I'd like to say that this honor goes beyond Judge Anderson. It goes to the heart of the Black community. The African American community in this county shares this honor. And as I look around and see so many groups represented, my heart is warm and full because you have come to show all of us, and especially the elected officials, that we know that you believe that we matter as a people. This is very important to us, that we make important contributions to the advancement of our community, that we love our community, and we will do everything that we can to make sure that it is the best community, and that our tourists will continue to want to come to this community, because we are an inclusive community. We celebrate diversity, and I hope that we will continue to do that, because that's what will bring people to our fair city, our fair county, and that's what our economy turns on, and that's very important. And we are here to say we want to help that, because that helps everybody. Now, as we continue this ceremony, I want to say that all of my material has been stolen. The speakers have told you just about everything. But I do want to add one thing that shows the measure of this man, because he was, in addition to everything else you have heard, a Christian man. And I see many members of my church here today, and I'm going to ask you to stand in a few minutes, but I want to share this story. When Isaac was a senior circuit judge, I know that's not a category, but he had been on the bench many years, and a new circuit judge came on, and she had teenage children. Isaac called her one day and said to her, "Would you like to serve in Fort Myers, where you can be very close to your young family?" She was overjoyed. And of course, she made the switch with him. And as you heard earlier, his last several years were spent in Charlotte County because he reached out and helped somebody. That's the kind of person he was. One more story, and then I'm going to call on my son, who is full of stories. The family was traveling out of town one day, going north, and the judge was driving. And I guess we got caught up in conversation because he started speeding. We were still in Lee County. We got stopped. The patrolman came and he went through the procedure, and then he went back to his car. You wonder how I know all of this. Well, I guess I've been stopped a few times too. When he came back to our car, he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake." And the judge said, "No, you didn't. You were doing your job. Give me the ticket." He was a very young patrolman. I don't know if this was his first day on the job, but somehow, whatever he went back to his car for, he learned that he shouldn't stop a judge, and he was trying not to give him the ticket. So they dickered for about 2 minutes, and Isaac insisted that he give him the ticket. So ultimately he did. He had to. He said, "I'm outranked here. I have to give you the ticket." As we drove away, Isaac said to his 2 sons, "I hope you learned something there. Always be fair, never pull rank, take what you deserve, because if you don't, you will pay for it later." He always was a humble person. Now I know that sounds funny to some of you because of the braggadocio way that he carried himself, but he was humble, and he wanted to be seen as one of the people, and he acted that way. He never pulled rank. He enjoyed his job. He loved his job. And it was, as we say, my dream job. And the job suited him well. And he was happy. Being a native of Dunbar, having played football in high school, having been a lead singer in the choir, he was, in every sense of the word, a product of Dunbar. Does that satisfy you, Mrs. Booker? Now, before I call Justin up, I would like to have all of the people, well, first of all, I want my family to stand. From South Carolina and from Georgia, and of course Christopher from right here. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And there are so many other groups. Do I see Judge Adams back there? Okay. Just wanted to see some judges who served with him. And after the ceremony is over, I want you to ask Judge Adams, what does chocolate thunder mean? I'd like for my church members to stand. Trinity and Divine Connection. Would you stand, please? Thank you. I'd like for the Divine Nine to stand. The Divine Nine. And we see the Catholics over here. Raise your hand if you're already standing. Thank you. I'd like for Progressive Women to stand. League of Women Voters. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm looking for other groups. I'd like for all church people to stand. Or raise your hand. There you go. There you go. The churches are so supportive. And I am so happy to be here in the seat of power. It's not every day that we come to the seat of power, commissioners. And it's just wonderful to be here. And I see that my time is perhaps up. So I just want to again invite you to join us at the reception. Thank you. Justin?
Thank you, Mo. Well, first, let me just say thank you for having us here. This is an amazing honor. I know Dad would be so proud and so happy. I know we've been here for a minute, and I'm going to ask you to stay here for a couple more minutes. It will be entertaining. There will be a couple things some people might have some issues with, but I promise you at the end, you'll be happy. First, before I start, Mrs. Booker, where are you? Ma'am, there you are. Mrs. Booker was my father's high school math teacher, and then geometry. Then she had the privilege, 30 years later, to be my dean in high school at Fort Myers High. So Mrs. Booker holds a special place in my heart, and in Dad's heart too, because I can tell you, when I was 14, I wasn't exactly the most mature and the most forward-thinking man that you see before you today. So I would get in a little bit of trouble. And when I would implore Mrs. Booker to please not call my father, because you know that man is crazy and you know you will never see me again. Because she knew him, she knew that was true. So there were many things that later in life I had to, kind of cop to that Dad never knew about. My father's life was one of service. It was one of service in his entire life from beginning to end. He always looked to serve people, and that's what drove him. You heard made mention of his military career, but what I want to really point out is the fact that This was a man, you know, my mother's flowery words, who grew up with humble means. This man was dirt poor. And when I say dirt poor, I mean dirt poor. A poorness that I don't know, thank God. And somehow, some way, not somehow, some way, Jim Stevens, the late great Jim Stevens, made a way for my dad to get to Allen University. Because while my dad was on the football team, he was definitely not a player. But he was a smart man, and Jim Stevens knew that, and knew that this man needs to get to college some way. And he made a way for him to get to Allen University. So what I wanted to point out was the fact that my father had spent his first year in university before he volunteered to go to Vietnam for 2 tours of duty. I don't know very many people who would have left college to do that, especially people who come from such meager backgrounds. I don't know very many people who are willing to give up that freedom. I'll tell a couple stories to talk about his service in the 3 different ways that he viewed service. My mother mentioned, you know, his belief in God, his relationship with Jesus. Of course, that informed all of his decisions. But he also was, as my mother mentioned, a man of the people. He did not believe he was any better than anyone else. When I was 8 years old, we were driving up to Charlotte County to go fishing. This is one of the few times he had the patience to take me fishing. And we stopped at a stoplight just by, I don't think it's there anymore, it's just south of Zemmel Road. And these 2 guys in a beat up pickup truck stopped next to us. I mean, these guys were scuzzy, messed up hair, tattoos everywhere. I mean, these are the kind of guys you really don't want to look at twice at a stoplight. And to my surprise, these 2 gentlemen were literally leaning out of their truck, trying to say hello to my dad. Like, hey, Judge Anderson, how you? It's great to see you, good to see you. How you doing? It's good to see you. And they drove off, and I asked Dad, how do you know those 2? He said, oh, those are 2 guys that just got out of prison this week. I put them in there 5 years ago. Excuse me? And they're happy to see you? They're saying hello? And you know, Dad said something to me, literally, I'd never forget. He said, you know, if you treat people with respect, they will treat you with respect. And if they don't, to hell with them. Plain and simple. And he had many instances like that, as you heard from other people up here who said, you know, when he'd have breakfast at the farmer's market, everybody in the community knew. If you wanted to talk to Judge Anderson, just show up at the farmer's market Saturday morning, because that's where you'll find him. He wanted to be accessible to everybody. He would tell me all the time. He said, you know, if you're fair with people and you're good to people, you don't have to go ducking like some of these other judges do. And that's a lesson I learned real well. Another story talking about service, and this is one that I know almost none of you here know, because as was pointed out, as public officials, when you're voted into office, not everybody wants you to succeed. And certainly when you are the first black judge in Southwest Florida, there are a lot of people who do not want you to succeed. I'm sure you can imagine we had our share of death threats through the years. But you know what's interesting is that, and this is really where the rubber met the road. It wasn't really about the death threats and stuff like that, because I don't know how to describe that. Dad really kind of dealt well with that, and we as a family kind of let it roll off our backs. It was really more of a daily personal injustices that we survived just living here in this community. You know, when I was 14 years old, I was stopped by a sheriff's deputy from 14 to 18. This man lived across the street from one of my good friends. This man was so angry at the fact that I was friends with a white girl, he literally went to my friend's mother and said, do you know Justin Anderson comes here when you're not home? And to her credit, Miss Gail Hall, a retired teacher, said, of course I do. And he's welcome in my home anytime. But of course, this didn't stop this man. 4 years, I told y'all. He would follow me. He'd call his little buddies who were on duty to see what this black boy on his bicycle in this white neighborhood was doing. Yes, he did all that. And you know, because my father was a judge, something was done about it. But you know what? There's a lot of black boys in this county that ride their bikes, just having fun, minding their own business. And they don't have the privilege that I have to actually have the retribution when their rights are violated. I'd love to say that this is something of the past, something that just happened 30 years ago. But hey, just happened to me a couple years ago, right by my house. Lady followed me all the way to my house. I'm like, why are you following me? What do you want? She, oh, well, you know, she didn't know she was speaking to somebody who has a law degree and who knows what's legal to stop somebody. So I just let her talk. I said, yeah, you're going ahead. But you know, like I said, bear with me, because joy comes in the morning. Service. In spite of that one person, and well, there's several people who abused their power, I saw that it's really not about those one or two people who abuse their power. It is about those people who dedicate their lives to serving other people. I go back to those death threats. The last one that we had was from Kevin Foster, Lords of Chaos. You guys remember that one? Boy, woo! A funny inside story about that in terms of, for you lawyers. Court TV called my dad. I remember the case started on Wednesday. He impaneled the jury. He went through all 12 prosecution witnesses on Thursday. Friday, Court TV calls him and says, oh yeah, we want to send down a TV crew to come, you know, film the trial and everything on Monday. And Dad said, the case can be over by then. Isn't this a capital case? He said, yeah, the case can be over by then. Oh my God. Yeah, which just speaks to the efficiency of how he ran his courtroom. You know, from the family side of his efficiency, as a teenager, when you come home and your father is always home, wasn't happy about that. I was like, why do you have to be so efficient? Why do you have to start court at 8 o'clock every morning? Why can't you be like other parents and just be at work all day and leave me my alone time at home? But you know, when he went through that case and he sentenced Kevin Foster to death, and he went to prison, Mr. Foster got the good idea to put out a hit list on all of us. And he actually hired the reporter who was covering him for those last 3 years to do it. So that morning, which was actually July 4th, and it's funny to me that I've heard several people who've worked with Dad describe Dad as terrifying. And I say it's funny, not because Dad wasn't a terrifying man, it's because y'all didn't live with the man. He was not your father. You didn't have to stand there and look him in the eye and hear him say, I know you're lying, I can tell. I deal with liars every day. I mean, that July 4th morning, Dad came down. He was gonna go fishing with John Mills. And Dad sees me watching TV and he casually says, yeah, somebody's out there trying to kill us, so look out. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, somebody's out there trying to kill us, so you know, look out, I'm going fishing with John Boy. And that was it. He just walked out, just went on. John Boy has the other side of that story, which is even more hilarious. But, you know, thankfully, with the diligent work of the Lee County Sheriff's Department, the threat was neutralized. And that happened more than once. So as I said, you know, it's about service. It's about helping other people. It's not about you, it's about helping others. And that was his entire life, and that's what he wanted to impart upon you. And I'll end with this. You know, when Dad passed away, it was interesting because many people came up to us, many people, and they had several different stories about ways in which Dad had helped them. Whether it was in court, whether it was out of court, whether, you know, wherever it was. And I knew this kind of at a gut level, but we had started hearing more and more about it that, you know, Dad was the kind of man who, if he could help you, he would help you. And that was it. Wasn't anybody's business. He wouldn't tell anybody. I mean, if you wanted to tell somebody, great. But it was between you and him. And I realized there were thousands of people who may not have ever come before him in court that he's helped and that we don't know about. And they're just out there. And that is what service is about. And that's what his life was about. And that's why this honor is so fitting. And so thank you very much.
Well, so today I feel like we all know Isaac even better now than many of us did. We've heard from his colleagues, we've heard from his family, and I will say this, I will wrap up with this reflection today. I looked at Isaac when I learned about him first last year on a visit to the Black History Museum, and I thought, wow, this man is a role model. And today has only confirmed that. He was a role model for his community, in the actions that he did as a leader in his community. He was a role model in the courtroom, clearly, as a mentor and as somebody who respected this facility and the process. And he was a role model at home. And as a dad with 2 kids myself, I respect that tremendously. And I hope that someday I'll be standing here with my 2 kids and my wife, hearing them tell all sorts of fun stories too. So I just want to say thank you all for showing up today. Now is the time that we have all been waiting for. We are going to gather over here at this pillar with the black cloth over it. And we are going to unveil the plaque that dedicates this building to Isaac Anderson Jr. And so if Miss Anderson and her family and all of our elected officials up here would escort us, and we'll have some on each side, we'll go ahead and unveil the plaque.